What's up everyone, it's Dakota and welcome back to another Pioneer video, and today we're going to be taking a look at Izzet Ensoul artifact for the Pioneer format. This deck existed towards the beginning of the format. This is kind of like a spin-off of the Ensoul artifact deck that we'd seen many years ago during like Magic Origins Standard, where people were playing cheap artifacts and trying to slam like Ensoul artifact on them and just try to beat down your opponent super quick with some really fast, like turn 2, like 5/5s and things like that. So before we get too deep into the deck, of course, if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to see more videos like this, I post a lot of modern content, Pioneer content, and longer form videos. Please consider subscribing and ring the notification bell so you know when those videos get posted. If you go to the link down below in the description, there is a link to the deck, and a link to my Discord server as well. Feel free to follow those links. Enjoy the deck, try it out for yourself if it interests you, and of course, join the Discord server as well if you want to talk about Magic and things like that. Also, finally, check out the Casual Spikes podcast that goes on every Saturday on the channel, where we're going to be talking about RC Denver and kind of Randy's experience with the event and how things went, and the breakdown and everything like that. We're going to be covering it pretty extensively, I would say, while also trying not to talk ad nauseum about all the crazy things that happened this past weekend. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into the deck. We have Izzet Ensoul artifact, and the name of the deck gets its name from the namesake Ensoul artifact. So it's a 2-mana aura that has enchant artifact. Enchanted artifact is a creature with base power, toughness 5/5 in addition to its other types. So simple, easy. So what are we doing with this card? So you see that we have Combat Courier, not Ballmat Courier. We have Spyglass Siren, and you have Voldaren Epicure. These cards you can play on turn 1. Combat Courier is just a 1-mana artifact. Nothing like super special. Spyglass Siren and Voldaren Epicure both create artifact tokens when they end up play. Voldaren Epicure a blood token, Spyglass Siren a map token, and this allows you to turn 2 Ensoul artifact onto that artifact, whether it's the Courier, the Siren, or the Epicure, or the tokens made by those two. And you're able to attack with it for 5-6 damage on turn 2, and just getting to deal like a ton of damage to your opponent early and often. You can pair Ensoul artifact with a Smuggler's Copter, and then you have a 5/5 flying. Whenever it attacks or blocks, draw a card. If you do, discard a card, which is pretty good. A flyer with evasion. Another target, which I believe this deck is playing, Darksteel Citadel, which is just an indestructible land that taps for a colorless mana. You can enchant a Ensoul artifact onto it, and you have a 5/5 indestructible, which is pretty hard for a lot of decks to beat. When you're essentially having to chump block it every turn, and there's no I would say really good exile removal currently in the format. So this is a little bit harder of a threat to eliminate in game 1. You have Inti, you have Reckless Bushwhacker, you have a ton of small little spells and stuff that you can play. In addition to Ensoul artifacting a Courier, all these tokens and stuff that you make. You have some other options in like Gleeful Demolition, where you can just destroy them and make 3/1/1s, and you can pair this with like a Reckless Bushwhacker, and you can give those creatures haste and +1/+0. So this is like a way that if you have 3 mana, like on turn 3, you could, in theory, Gleeful Demolition one of your artifact spells, and then cast a Reckless Bushwhacker, and then you're attacking for 8 on turn 3 after you've attacked for 6 on turn 2, what have you. It usually involves you having to sacrifice one of your other, or destroy artifacts, whatever. But I believe if you pair with a Darksteel Citadel and you Gleeful Demolition you can kind of get around the fact. So you could, in theory, attack for way more. I believe it's 14, 16 damage on turn 3 if you Gleeful Demolition your own Darksteel Citadel, because it just says that if you control that you destroy it. If you control that artifact, you make 3/1. So I'm pretty sure you could make 3/1/1s. Targeting your indestructible thing, Reckless Bushwhacker, you basically just killed your opponent. It's game over from that point. You also have Shrapnel Blast, which is another card that cares about artifacts. It's a 2-mana instant that you sacrifice an artifact as additional cost. It deals 5 damage to any target. Of course, this is pretty good removal for Shielders and things like that once they kind of hit the board. But with the amount of damage that this deck can kind of like spew out, Shrapnel Blast for 5 damage is just enough reach to absolutely just obliterate your opponent and send them to the Shadow Realm and make them very sad. Because I think even as like a veteran player, you kind of forget that Shrapnel Blast is a card that exists in the Pioneer format. So there's probably going to be a non-zero amount of times where you've played against someone who maybe is not familiar with the strategy, and you can just kind of, be this aggressive beat down deck and kill your opponent, get them to a low enough life total, and then they think they stabilize and you Shrapnel Blast them for lethal. Definitely makes for an interesting surprise. They respect it from there, but you just have to put the fear in them, and you can kind of figure something out for game 2 and game 3. So you have some other kind of tools like Inti is like probably the only other card that we went over, where you can attack and discard a card. You can put a +1/+1 counter on an attacking creature and it gains trample until end of turn. Again, pretty good for like these 5/5 creatures, turning them into 6/6, and they get to push through damage. And you can also get to impulse draw in a way where you discard one or more cards, you exile a top card of your library, you can play that card until your next end step. So Inti is going to allow you to hit some land drops. You play some pretty cheap creatures and some pretty cheap spells. So even if you exile like a combat courier with a Inti trigger, or even like a Torch the Tower, Gleeful Demolition, what have you, you're more than likely going to be able to cast it on your next turn, and it's just going to slowly accrue card advantage as you discard some of these extra lands, because again, you don't really need all these lands to do the things that you want to do. Mana base, you're playing the 4 Darksteel Citadel, 2 Down the Bugbear, you're playing an island and a mountain, 1 Otawara, and 1 Sokenzen. I mean, this is pretty standard for most decks here nowadays to play channel lands in their colors. Sokenzen doesn't make artifact creature tokens, which is a little unfortunate, but it does allow you to be a little aggressive just to make 2 1/1s on your opponent's turn, and then you can cast a spell and then Reckless Bushwhacker and just end up dealing a ton of damage in one turn cycle. 4 Spire Bluff, 4 Steam Vents, going to come and play untapped in the early turns, which is when you really need it, when you're just trying to curve out 1 to 2 mana and then just kind of ride that 2 mana spell to victory. Sideboard, you have Rending Volley, Spell Pierce, Torch the Tower, the 4th copy, and negate 2 Unlicensed Hearse for those graveyard decks. Rampaging Ferocidon is a way to kind of punish the decks that want to kind of go wide, where you can stop your opponents from gaining life. This is also really good in the Amalia matchups, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield, deals 1 damage to that creature's controller. This is especially good now that they're kind of going towards more of a kill with the tower, the card that, of course, I can't remember. Aetherflux Reservoir, that's the one. Always escapes me whenever I need to record a video. But now that they're kind of going in that sort of way, Rampaging Ferocidon is kind of a way that you can stop that. And of course, this deck doesn't really have a good way of dealing with an Amalia, but in a way, you can kind of force them into situations where they kind of have to commit a little bit to what they're doing, and then you can try to snipe the Amalia while they're mid combo. But Rampaging Ferocidon does a pretty good job of kind of racing your opponent, and then of course dealing damage to them whenever they play creatures. Hazard the Fervent, we haven't seen her in a while. Indestructible Haste, 4 mana 5/4, can't attack or block unless you have 1 or fewer cards in hand, and then you can pay 3 and discard a card and it deals 2 damage to your opponent. This is a way that you can get a little bit more reach in the deck. 5/4 Indestructible, we talked about a 5/5 Indestructible attacking, definitely a 5/4 Indestructible hitting your opponent is going to be pretty good, and these are going to be kind of in those grindier matchups where your opponent just has a ton of removal in to kill off your tokens and stuff. Fatal Push is going to be pretty brutal against everything that isn't named Darksteel Citadel. So the fact that Hazard the Fervent is able to come down, it's can be targeted by Fatal Push, but it's not going to have anything done to it, and it's going to give you a little bit of reach as well, giving you kind of a mana outlet to just kind of pump your mana into, and then discard cards, deal damage to your opponent, and then attack with a 5/4 is going to kind of put them on the back foot, because they're going to have to probably chump block it every turn. You're just putting them into the abyss is going to be pretty good. Eventually, when you're able to cast some of these other spells, maybe you get an Inti in play on a turn where your opponent can't really interact, and then you're going to be able to give this make this thing a 6/5 trampling Indestructible Haste threat. It's going to be amazing. So yeah, that is the Ensoul Artifact deck. This list in particular got 7th place in the Pioneer Showcase Challenge. Pretty impressive, honestly. Pretty good week, I would say, for the deck. That I don't want to say kind of came out of nowhere, because I think this deck has been kind of a thing for a while, but I think now has kind of found its legs. And how many times can I say think in a sentence? It's kind of crazy. So yeah, this is an Ensoul Artifact deck. looking pretty good right now. I think kind of a solid choice going forward. I mean, just the fact of being this kind of small aggressive deck, if you kind of catch your opponent off guard, maybe they mulligan down to like 6 or 5 or 6, whatever, you can kind of just run them over a little bit. And even if they think about stabilizing, you can just throw 5 damage at their face and more than likely win the game just off that play. So yeah, that's going to do it for me in this video. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like on the video. Comment down below what Pioneer deck you would like to see next. Check out the links in the description down below. And of course, check out the Casual Spikes podcast here on my channel as we try to cruise to 1K subscribers before the end of the year. You know, I know we can do it. We're going to be trying to put out as much content as we can throughout this whole year to reach our goals. So that's going to do it for me. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one.